This is my $1,500 Volvo V70R that I've been slowly upgrading and restoring on this YouTube channel. In today's video, we are replacing the entire turbo system, including the K24 turbo itself, the turbo manifold, the intake piping, and the intercooler. Now, how did I get this deep into this $1,500 project? In the last episode, I set out to improve the exhaust note of this car with a rare Japanese-made turbo manifold that can be found on very few early 2000s Volvos. And this Japanese-made manifold is one of the most debated upgrades when it comes to Volvos. So I decided I would test it for myself with a side-by-side comparison, but in removing my original R manifold, I found some more underlying issues with my car. The exhaust side of my 150,000 mile old turbocharger was making some noise. I didn't quite feel comfortable putting this back together, and thankfully I actually had a brand new K24 turbo that I pulled off a part out car from earlier in the year. I decided I would swap this turbocharger that has only about 100 miles onto my car, but alongside it, because of a different compressor side outlet connection, I would also have to swap over all of the intake piping and the bigger intercooler that came on the crashed car. I'm super excited to finish this car because what started as a simple turbo manifold replacement turned into the biggest project that I've gotten into with this $1,500 V70R, and I think after all this work is done, the car is going to be so much better than when it first rolled into the garage. So let me show you where I'm at with the car. Over here in the front radiator support, we've got basically just a whimsy little condenser hanging down there. And then at the back of the engine, it's currently naturally aspirated. Kind of crazy. There's a lot that needs to be put back on this car before it can be running and driving again. But we will still be comparing the stock R manifold to the new Japanifold as well. The other modifications that we're doing should not affect the sound characteristics of the exhaust note significantly enough that it won't be a valid comparison of the manifolds anymore. But let me show you all the parts that need to go on the car. Of course, here are the old ones, and here are the new parts. We obviously have the Japanifold, the heat shields for it, and the turbo. This is all of the intercooler piping. What's fantastic is it does come with a bunch of brand new sensors. The MAF sensor included in that as well. That turbo control solenoid over there is brand new too. And of course, we've got our nice beefy intercooler. I think we'll start this morning by trying to mount the intercooler and making all of that piping work. What I've done is taken one of these fog light brackets and I cut it down to this piece right here. Although it looks a little ugly, it's actually mounting up pretty good. This is where I can thread an OEM bolt through for full stealth mode. Tighten it down. I think when you look at it from this distance, you really could not tell. Let's see what happens when we remove my jack stand. There it is, a fully mounted intercooler. It actually feels pretty sturdy. It's funny that I'm surprised. I need to make one more bracket that should go right here and probably connect to here. But unfortunately, my cutoff wheel broke, so I cannot make one right now. I think this is gonna look amazing under the front bumper. This is one of those subtle modifications that when you're driving down the road and you see another car with a big intercooler hanging out the bottom bumper like this, you know you're not gonna mess with it, especially if there's a laptop on the passenger seat running Vita. Intercooler piping from the cold side of the intercooler is all in place. It goes up to the throttle body, which sits down here. And it looks pretty sweet. Now I've got to do the hot side of the intercooler, which goes all the way up and over the engine down to the turbo that currently isn't installed yet. Now we can put on the new overpipe. This goes over the engine to the turbo. I'm just gonna put it on and not really tighten it down yet. I kind of just need it to position the front air hose here. All of the intercooler and the piping that goes along with it is now on the car. So it's time to put in the turbo, the Japanifold, then bolt it all back up together, and we'll be ready to take this thing for a rip. This has been very challenging, but again, a lot of learning for me along the way. I've never done anything that's even a little bit custom like this. It seems a little strange, but I'm gonna put in the turbo first. At the Volvo dealer for an O-ring, actually 2 O-rings, 2 crush washers, and a gasket. And the guy at the parts counter literally said, don't buy it here. If I ring this up, it's gonna be over $400. When the parts counter guy literally says, don't do this, man, it's a good idea to walk away. Absolutely insane. It's absolutely pouring rain out here today, but the parts that I needed from FCP Euro just came in, and I'm so excited to finish buttoning this car back together. The intercooler is in, all the piping is in, and the turbo is kind of just dangling back there. The parts I was waiting for was the correct seals for the turbo oil line and the crush washers for the coolant lines, and then some exhaust gaskets as well. I want to put this thing back together properly with the right hardware so that we don't have those bolt issues again as well. The next step is to put in the Japanifold, which is what this whole project was originally supposed to be about. Of course, we're still gonna compare the exhaust notes before and after the Japanifold. We've changed nothing else to the exhaust. Super stoked to take this thing for a drive once it's all back together. But I have a lot of work ahead of me, so let's open up some parts and get to work. Stoked for these. We've got tons of suspension parts. This is all for a future video. Tie rod ends. This was 17 bucks at FCP. Just quickly, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please hit that button down below. I've got so many more Volvo projects coming up on this channel. This is a line for the power steering cooler, but I actually broke this green tab, as you can see. And while we're at it, it's good practice to replace O-rings like this. So first you slide on the green piece, and then our new O-rings can go on. Now I'll put just a little oil on the rings, help them actually slide in. And there we go. Nice and fresh, much better. The exhaust ports back here have been cleaned as best as I could. It's kind of difficult to get to. It's time for the Japanifold install. I've been dreading this part because it's going to be pretty difficult to mount up, but let me just give it a shot here. This coolant line can come out of the way, and let's just see how it sits back there first, and then I'll start trying to slide in gaskets and stuff. I'm gonna take a couple bolts with me and try to slip in these gaskets from underneath. I think I'll have better access. Let's give this a shot. This is gonna be difficult. How the hell am I gonna do it? Uh-oh. I don't know how to do this. Unfortunately, I think it's time for more drastic measures to be taken. I successfully removed the turbo and the manifold without removing the angle gear, but unfortunately I don't think it's going to be possible to put it all back together without actually removing the angle gear. So I'm going to drop the angle gear, which means I have to remove the downpipe completely, remove the axle on the passenger side. I have to remove the drive shaft. A whole lot more work. Let's get it done. I think it'll be worth it. For context, here's what I'm working with. That's the manifold, that's the turbo. There is just no way I'm getting all this back together. That is my access point to the turbo lines. That is my access to putting in exhaust manifold bolts. I think if I just removed this angle gear here, which is what sends power to the back of the car, and I remove this axle here, we'll just have a ton more working room and I'll be able to actually put everything back together properly. The drive shaft, unfortunately, should not be making this noise. Well, the drive shaft bolts back here are disconnected. Although the drive shaft seems kind of shot, actually. Time to start removing this angle gear here. Let's see how tight this is. Oh. beautiful. All right, angle gear is loose, clearly. Oh, whoa, that came off very, very easy. What the hell is that, an exhaust manifold gasket? Woo! Oh, why was that way easier than I thought? Oh. The angle gear is out of the car. That was a ton of work, but now we'll be able to put all this back together and know that it's done properly. The collar sleeve itself looked to be in pretty good condition. I'm not worried about replacing it right now. Definitely not what I was expecting to get into when I thought about just replacing the manifold. Let's start the process of finally putting it all back together. We're gonna go manifold, turbo, angle gear, downpipe, axle, and intake, and then we'll drive it. I think I'll just make a sick little montage because this has taken a long time and I want to crush through all of this. So let's get to work. first start since all the work we've done. Wow, there was a moment there where I thought that this car was not going back together. I had this car in a million pieces. The angle gear, the downpipe, the turbo, the manifold, the intercooler, all the intercooler piping, it's all been changed. This is by far the biggest change that we've had to this car yet. Let's go for a quick pull here. The car feels really good. Now the Japanifold, initially, it was supposed to be kind of like this quick little thing. I had never seen a direct comparison online before, but that was kind of my intention when I set out. And I thought, I'll go get one from the junkyard, quickly swap it in, and we'll see if this is a worthwhile upgrade to do on its own. And although I can hear a difference in the sound, it's a little smoother, and surprisingly, it actually pops and burbles a lot more than it did before. I wouldn't say, you have to go out and do this mod right now. If you have your entire engine out and you're already removing your turbo, would it be worthwhile for the sound? Maybe. It sounds a little cooler. It definitely pops a lot more. Now, what I will say was worthwhile was the turbo intercooler, the intercooler piping, and all the other stuff that we did. It might not have made the most immediate difference, but as far as reliability, future-proofing, and tunability, I think they were all very worthwhile mods. It's just peace of mind knowing that the intake air temperatures are properly cooled now with that beefy snob intercooler, and you can really feel the difference when you rev the car. It is much freer flowing. The intake generally just feels much less restricted. The revs drop back down to idle much quicker. Maybe I had a vacuum leak before that I fixed with all this new piping as well. That could be a part of it, but I'm super happy with the work. Although these aren't the flashiest upgrades or the things that make the most horsepower right now, I think for the future of this car, they are all extremely worthwhile. Basically, everything besides the actual engine and gearbox has now been removed off the car, which is kind of crazy. I feel a lot more confident in this car now, knowing that I've gone through everything, seeing the condition of the angle gear and collar sleeve. Overall, I just trust this car more now because I kind of am more educated on its condition. Before, it was kind of just a mystery to me. What had been serviced, what hadn't been serviced. Clearly, there was a lot of neglect in this car's history. And so it felt good to just go through everything, take care of little things like vacuum lines as well. Those things aren't like super cool for a YouTube video, but as far as long-term reliability goes, they are just peace of mind, and they're little things that can cause big headaches down the road that I know are now taken care of. So I feel really good about the work that was done in this video. If there's anything that actually added some cool sound to the car, it's the compressor bypass valve that was upgraded on the new turbo. It makes a bit of a different sound when you let off the throttle. Let me know what you think of the before and after. Can you tell a difference? Do you think it's worthwhile? There's so much more to do on this car, so if you're not already subscribed, please hit that button down below because I've got a ton of projects. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.